What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. Jordan Budd here, and I'm going to be rolling solo on this trip, or on this episode. I'm going to talk about my Dall Sheep hunt that I did in the Brooks Range of Alaska back in 2021. It was a hunt that I did with Sig Sauer, and we filmed it with First Light. So if you go to, you can go to my website, jordan-budd.com, and go to the videos or the films tab, and that film behind the gun is in there. And then, you can go to YouTube and type in probably like Jordan Budd behind the gun, and it'll pop up if you want to listen, or if you want to watch that. The film is the film is a little more heavier. It's like a sheep hunt. The sheep hunt is going on, but it's also bouncing back to more of my childhood. So it doesn't really encapsulate all of the things that I'm going to talk about. And a lot of that was because we were filming, so we had camera batteries on a 10-day backpack hunt, with not great ways to charge the batteries. And so we were just trying to conserve, a lot on what we shot. And this was just kind of the idea for the film that they had. So that, you can go watch that if you'd like, before or after this. So I just wanted to go through, there's been a lot of folks, like, people seem to really like hearing about sheep hunts. You know, they're a super adventure hunt. I was really fortunate before I even went on this hunt. I've got to film a lot of sheep hunts, which was really cool. From deserts, I filmed one stones, like 3 deserts, I think, and a pile of Rocky Mountain Bighorn, but I actually hadn't been on a Dall sheep hunt myself, or actually at all, until we planned this trip out and went in the Brooks Range in 2021 in Alaska. So, this was a hunt through Sig Sauer. We had myself going as a hunter, and then Daniel Horner is another hunter that went. And if you don't know Daniel, you got to look him up. Huge 3-gun shooter. Like, he's done a lot of like sniper challenges, and he shot professionally for the Army, and he's a SIG ambassador, and he's just like a real kick-ass guy. He's taught me a lot about shooting, which forever grateful for him. So anyways, he was going on this trip as well. We didn't hunt together. We actually split up, and he had a guide packer and a camera guy. Plus he had Pat from SIG went with him. And then I had my camera guy, Jonah Bell from Iowa. This is his first sheep hunt ever, first mountain hunt ever. He spent his first night in a tent on this trip. And it was a pretty brutal kind of a trip to have it be your first one. But he was a super trooper. He made it through, got some awesome video, awesome photos, and we had a great time. So we did that, and then I had my camera guy, Jonah, my guide, Wes Tyrell, which is him and his brother own the business that we went with called Tyrell's Trails out of Alaska there. So Wes was going to be my guide, and then I also had a packer that was from Salt Lake that it was also his first sheep experience, and his name is also Wes. So coincidentally enough. We got this trip planned, 10-day backpack hunt. We flew into Fairbanks all together on like commercial airlines, Alaska Air, whatever. And then we took a plane, jumped over to Chandelar Lake, up in the Brooks Range, which is where their kind of base camp cabins are. Got dropped off there, and then Luke would drop us off he dropped me off in a Super Cruiser, which is kind of like Super Cub, except wider. But, I guess that's basically where I'll start it, is just the hunt itself. I'll try not to be like too long-winded, try to keep some of the things brief. I think some of the things don't need super explained. And I'm not a good storyteller to start with, but I'll do my best. And this was a super epic trip. And it's one I'll never, ever, ever forget. And I'm also going to talk about some of the gear in here. I'm not going to go like super in depth, like every little thing that I took. But as we're talking about the story, I thought it'd be really good to talk about some of the gear stuff because I get questions on it a lot. The podcast is brought to you in part by First Lite Technical Clothing, keeping me dry and comfortable from the duck blind to the backcountry. Check out all of their offerings at firstlite.com. Sig Sauer, from the popular cross rifle, which I love, to everything optics, handguns, ammunition, and accessories. Visit sigsauer.com for their full lineup. And Onyx Hunt Maps. I use Onyx Maps to plan and execute my own hunts, plus keep everything organized and accounted for at the outfit. I'm always scouting with the app. Check them out at onyxhunt.com. Yeah, we flew in. We had like either a 50 or a 60 pound weight limit, which is typical. If you're going to get flown in, little cubs and stuff, they can't carry like that much weight. So they want you, especially if you're a bigger person, like you're going to have to be a little bit more strict on what you're going to take. But for a 10-day hunt, that's kind of hard. One of the things that they didn't include in here, and I don't think a lot of outfits include in here, is they supply the food. So that 50 or 60 pound pack limit is not including your food, which like you start looking at it for something like this. Like I actually don't eat. I feel like I eat a lot, but I actually don't eat that much when I'm on the mountain, like a pound and a half of food per day. And I really have to make myself eat that. I'm usually a little bit under that pound and a half. There's some guys that are 2 pounds a day. So to make math easy, 2 pounds a day for 10 days, that's 20 pounds of food. Just food that you have to carry. Plus, you've got all your other stuff. You have water weight at times. Actually, most of the time, you're at least going to have some water with you. And it just gets really, really heavy, especially there at the beginning. And then hopefully you'll like eat some of that weight off. And then you're going to be heavy on the way out as well. So let me see here. I'm going to do like a couple of maybe the basic things that you would expect. So the backpack that I decided to take, like doing a backpack hunt, you got to have really super solid backpack to take with you. So Kifaru, I've been running Kifaru backpacks for a really long time. And when I think of, there's a lot of really good backpack companies out there, but especially at the time when I thought about doing a sheep hunt, I'm like, I just didn't think about using anything but Kifaru because that frame is so awesome with weight on it. So I took a Kifaru frame and I took the Dall bag, which is a huge bag. It's very simplistic. There's not a lot of pockets, or I don't really think there's any pockets on it. It has side access, a couple of small slot pockets on the sides for slipping your trekking pole in and stuff like that. But it's very simplistic, big bag, which, on a little side tangent here, not really a tangent, but a little side note, for backpacks, like if you're somebody who you want to do like this bivy running gun type hunting, I guess it would be like bivy hunting where you're packing up camp every day. A simplistic bag works really well, I think. I think when you get to the bags that have more pockets and stuff, like, yeah, they would work for it. But if you don't need to organize a bunch of stuff around, you're kind of packing everything up into one. I think these like big, super basic bags are the way to go. But anyways, worked really well. Ended up at the end, when I packed out, we weighed my pack after I got back, and some people will tell you it weighed more, but I think that the weight that I remember is correct. My pack weighed 104 pounds on the scale, and I don't think that included my gun, maybe. So heavy. Literally, I got a fever from that situation. I think I've heard that after I got back, I didn't feel bad, but my skin was kind of tender to the touch. That's what kind of felt feverish. I had a fever rash on my chest and just doing some Google searching and talking to some people, they're like, yeah, some long distance runners say that they get that as well because they just like, they beat their body up and that's what happens. They can get like a fever rash and a little bit of a fever, but I felt fine. I just had a little bit of a rash, which wigged me out. What else? None of my toenails fell off, but I couldn't feel, I think it was my big toe. I couldn't feel my big toe for a couple of weeks on both sides. And just kind of my toes in general were kind of effed up. So it was kind of brutal, but I really don't think like some of these other backpacks and stuff, our packer had a backpack and the shoulder strap actually ended up breaking off, like ripping off on the first day. And they had to fix it with paracord, and luckily it held the entire time. But it was just kind of like one of those, I think it was like an Alps mountaineering frame, and the shoulder strap just like ripped off of the frame. It was wild. Not good, but if you're going to go on like a big hunt, a really good backpack is going to serve you well. So anyways, that's my spiel on the bag. Wouldn't change it for anything. And then the rifle that I took the Sig Sauer Cross. Folks will like see the picture of it, and a lot of people have asked me what it is because it's not exactly like the Sig Cross that you can purchase right now. You can actually you can get one now called the Trax that it's more minimalistic. It's a little bit shorter, but this cross was, I still have it. It was built to shave some weight, and I think that is still going to come in the future. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but I shot 140 grain Accubonds out of that it is like the Sig Sauer boxed ammunition, their factory loaded stuff. They call it the Elite Accubond and the Elite Series Accubond. It's great. It's really like, they're really good tolerances. There's not a lot of variance at all between rounds. So it's really good. I shot the 140 grain Nosler Accubonds out of it. I'll talk about it a little bit, but like when I ended up shooting the sheep, a little bit of a spoiler. When I ended up shooting the sheep, they performed really well. I ended up shooting a deer a little later on that year. They performed super well, on like a couple of deer later. So I like those. I like that bullet. It's kind of slow. I think I'm down in the 26s, maybe a little bit less, with that 140, but whatever. I put a Whiskey 5 scope on it. It's a lighter weight scope that Sig makes. It's an exposed turret. I ran mills on that hunt. Like, not that really matters, but I did. And then for binos, this is getting to something that people ask questions a ton about. So I chose to bring a spotting scope and in my own tripod. Typically, like, the guides will want you to be as light as you can. We were filming. I wanted to be able to have more of that interaction with the guide about like actually talking about the sheep and not having to just look through his spotter all the time. So I took my spotter. It's a 80 millimeter. It's an Oscar 8. And then the Outdoorsmans Compact tripod and pan head. So super solid setup there. No complaints. I wish that I wish Sig had a 60 that I could have taken, or a 65, but whatever. Lighter is good on those kinds of things. But like, if you're kind of worried about the weight that you're going to carry and you just don't want to have to deal with extra stuff to pack and whatever, just, your guide's going to have a spotting scope. They're used to people not carrying their own spotting scope. So it's kind of up to you. Like, doing it again, I would take a spotting scope because I really liked being able to, the glassing that we did get in, I liked being able to for us both to be looking at the sheep at the same time and be able to talk back and forth and kind of pick things apart instead of, him just having to sit on his glass trying to, age him or make sure he's full curl. and just like wait and then just get a little bit of time to look at them. So I think that's everybody's, that's one of the huge questions that pops up is like, gosh, am I going to take my own spotting scope or not? But it's really personal preference. But if you're worried about carrying that weight, then I just wouldn't worry about it. Just use the guides. And then I took the Sig Kilo 3K, the Rangefinding binoculars. So there's what I took there. Okay. So we got everything kind of situated at the main base camp, and then we got flown out. So we got flown to like a little mountain range. I don't even exactly know where we were, but this little set of mountain ranges, digging myself a hole here. But just like this little set of mountains, had a big main ridge going through the middle of it. As you can imagine, just like with any of the mountains and stuff, ridges and whatever that we have down here in the lower 48, like you have your main big ridge that runs like kind of the length of the range that you're in. And then you have pretty good sized, but still smaller ridges that come out from that. And then there's, basins up in there and whatever. So we got dropped off kind of on a low bench that looked up into the side, like one of the sides of this mountain range. And so we got dropped off on the ridge. It was Wes, it was Wes the guide, Wes the packer, Jonah the camera guy, and me. And this was 2 days before season, the afternoon of 2 days before season. The packer had been in there, I think, since the night before, and he got dropped off and was doing a little bit of glassing and found some sheep, just very like kind of obvious in an open basin. They were about 3 miles as the crow flew away from us, and we would end up having to kind of like climb and jot over to the east, jot back to the north on the main spine, and then possibly get a shot on them from there into that basin. That was kind of the original plan. So when we got dropped off, it was like super nice weather. We had some talks like, hey, should we pack up camp and try to move and get a little bit closer, or do we just stay where we're at? And we ultimately just decided to stay where we were for that night anyways, and just keep an eye on them. There was no real benefit to getting closer than we already were because we still had a full day before season even opened. And if they were to move around and kind of bump into us, we could blow them out of the country before the season even opened. So we ended up staying at the little strip, the ridge, overnight, and woke up the next morning, super beautiful day, and picked up the sheep again and basically just sat there and watched them all pretty much all day long. And towards the middle to like kind of in the afternoon of that day, the sheep went from just kind of milling around to just beelining it to the east towards a ridge or a saddle. They were kind of side hilling and going underneath of the ridge that we planned on being on to get a shot at them. Basically passed right under it, went through the saddle, and popped over into another drainage that we couldn't even see from where we were. So, and that all happened pretty dang fast. Like they just did not waste. They weren't running or anything. Nothing was following them, but they just sheep doing sheep things. They just decided to move out. So we packed up camp, made our way up towards that saddle, stopping short to camp that night before because, the same worry of like you get too close to them before season even starts and you blow them out, you never get a chance at them at all. It could blow them 2 drainages over and then you're just kind of out of luck. So we stopped short of that saddle and camped for that night. And we actually, in Alaska, there's no there's no shooting light. It's technically shooting light 24/7. So if we could have like shot one right at midnight. And we had tossed around the plan a little bit and actually ended up kind of talking and whatever. At like 1:00 in the morning, we got up and hiked up, tried to get to a point where we could look down and see these sheep. At the time when we left, it was really clear. We could see pretty well, like it was, low light for camera equipment, but we could see fairly well. And as we got up closer towards the top, we had some clouds move in and it just really made everything black. And we're like, this is not a good idea. So we turned around and came back down, camped there overnight, packed up our stuff the next morning, and side-hilled over to the saddle that we'd seen the sheep go through the day before. And we just got right into the saddle. We dropped our packs, really tried to move slow and just peek over. It's some of that terrain's really, that country is it's hard to describe. There's a lot of little, it's very, very rocky. There's some grass, but not really that much. It's mostly rock. And it's really rolly on those hillsides. So it's not like it's just a flat hillside that you can look into or look across. It's really rolly. There's a ton of little pockets that a sheep could easily disappear into. So we were being, we got everything ready. We were on alert, being pretty slow, working through this saddle, and Wes found I think there were 2 rams or 3 really little rams that were with the main 5 that we had been glassing. 2 of the 5 were what he thought were going to be legal, and then the other ones were definitely not. So these 3 rams start coming towards us, and we make a little bit of a adjustment. I'm crawl up to this little, like a perfect little shooting bench, and I'm set up, and I think these 3 rams come within 300 yards of us, and they bed down. And we're just waiting on the bigger ones to come behind them, and they never do. We waited there for probably a couple hours. The little rams ended up getting up from their beds and feeding back around to the west through the saddle that they had just come through the night before. Assuming that they were the same sheep, we're assuming that they were. There could have been some switcheroos there, but they left. The big ones never showed up, and honestly, we never saw them again. So from that saddle, we packed all our stuff up, and we're like, well, we don't want to go too far because those rams have to be right here somewhere. They've got to be in this drainage that we should be able to get a shot on. It's pretty maneuverable in there. It's pretty stalkable that we should be able to, if we can find them, we can try to move to get in range. And so we pack up and we go from the saddle up onto the ridge to the north that spine would have taken us to the main big ridge that ran through the mountain range. So we got up there, we glassed that evening, never picked them up. And we're like, well, we don't want to camp right on top because if they end up popping over or being kind of close, we don't want to be super exposed. So we dropped off the edge a little bit, set up camp, and woke up the next morning and it was 0-0. So 0 visibility. And we were just basically in the clouds, and it was raining, and it was pretty dang windy too. So there were some crazy gusts happening. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the camping gear that I had. I took the Hilleberg Niak tent. That's they call it a 3.5 season. It's, you can fit 2 people in it, but for one person, it's a good size tent to have some of your gear inside with you, which if you have to spend a lot of time inside, or you may have to, that's kind of nice. It's 3 pounds, it's in the low 3 pound mark. So it's not too bad to carry. Has 1 vestibule, 1 door, and they actually call it a 3.5 season. So the internal tent has some mesh in it, so it can still breathe fairly well. But the vestibule pitches all the way to the ground, so it also cuts some wind and can keep snow and rain and stuff from blowing in onto your gear or onto you from underneath the vestibule. So that's the tent I took. I would take it again and recommend it to absolutely anybody. The next thing I took was for a sleeping pad. I took the big Agnes Qcore SLX. This pad wasn't bad for this trip. I got along pretty well with it. Part of our issue is it just got way, way colder than it was supposed to, than we were planning on. Looking back, I've just started to buy wide sleeping pads. Just in general, I think they're 25 inches wide. I would highly recommend that because they're just nicer to sleep on. I think that they're warmer as well. And, yeah. And then I took the Kifaru Slick 20 degree sleeping bag. That's a synthetic sleeping bag. You know, a lot of the folks that you talk to about like going to Alaska, they're like synthetic. There are some folks that will just take treated down with them. I'm currently still kind of on the fence after this trip. The synthetic was great. Part of me, I did get kind of chilly. It just got colder. Like we were in the teens, the high teens on a couple of those nights. It was pretty dang cold. So I'm not blaming the bag or blaming the fill or anything, but yeah, it got a little chillier than we thought it was going to get. And then something else I brought was an ultralight Borah bivy. And the reason I did that is because, you know, on a sheep hunt, sometimes you just end up sleeping in places that are not really conducive to pitching a tent. So I thought with that ultralight bivy, which it is super light, it's like 9 ounces, I think, folds in super small. It's a pretty thin material, but you can put your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad inside of it, acts as a ground cloth. Just kind of another moisture barrier was some of my thoughts. And then being able to sleep outside if it was nice enough to do so, which it never was. But I'm glad I had it. It ended up being like a nice moisture barrier. I'll get to it, but we ended up getting some snow and just a ton of rain. So, yeah, I'm glad I had that. I even use that. That's kind of a main staple for me here in the lower 48, hunting in the mountains with like especially a floorless tent or something like that. I really like that thing. So, okay. So carrying on. So the next morning we woke up super socked in, can't go anywhere. Really the main deal is like, it wasn't the rain so much that was holding us back. Like we have good rain gear with us and pack covers and all that. It's the being socked in, clouded in, can't see. You don't want to go walking past stuff you can't see. And then you also like a lot of this country it's pretty technical. It's difficult to maneuver around and you want to be able to see like up ahead of you quite a ways to make sure that you're going a good route and you're not going to like go to a cliff or something like that. So we stayed in the sleeping bag all day. We stayed in our tents all day. It was socked in. And looking at the weather, it was kind of like, yeah, it wasn't really supposed to rain that much anyways. But yeah, looking at the weather, pulling it from our inReach devices or our Garmin inReaches, like it was supposed to be pretty nice the rest of the time. So we're like, whatever, we'll stay in the tent for a day. Like, what can it hurt? And so the next morning we wake up, it's raining, it's really windy, and it's socked in. And so we stayed in for, probably like half the day. Maybe it was like around noon, 1 o'clock or so. And the clouds started to break up a little bit. So we got out, did some glassing. Things did start clearing up. So we packed up our stuff and started heading up the ridge and going pretty slow, just trying to glass off both sides into both basins and just see if we could find those rams again. I ended up finding a ram that was like 2 drainages over that went up and over into like the main spine of the range, up and over to like the other slopes. And so we didn't know if they were them or not, still don't, but they were gone and not going the direction that we were going to go anyways. Our plan is once we got to that main set of ridges, we were going to head west. I know it's hard to visualize that, because on a podcast, but we didn't want to go east. There wasn't really a loop to make that direction. We wanted to go to the west, and hopefully we were going to be able to, when it was all said and done, we ended up making a huge loop, kind of a westerly loop. So we picked our way up that ridge. We would, go a few hundred yards. We would glass a while, and we would get socked in. Couldn't see anything. And then we would, it would clear up a little bit. We'd glass, move 500-600 yards, and then it would sock in. We couldn't see anything. So it pretty much went like that all afternoon. We ended up making it through some kind of nasty, like cliffy stuff. We had to take our backpacks off and kind of jump off these little ledges and then put our backpacks back on, which is kind of interesting. But we ended up getting to kind of getting to the main ridge and this saddle in the main ridge. And on the other side of that saddle was a nice little creek that flowed down. And then just above that was a nice bench with a flat grassy spot on top of it. And we could see some glimmer down there like there was water. So we knew that we had water there kind of close, which was nice. So we glassed a little bit, didn't see any sheep. Up to our west, it was like an 800-foot climb probably, and like for sure less than a mile. So it was just like a pretty steep, but really good point there to the west of us. That west is like, I want to get on top of that. It's super good for glassing. It's pretty flat. We can camp. Like, it's just a really ideal spot to just be able to sit and glass, kind of hang out until we could see some sheep moving. So we start heading up there. We're probably halfway up, and I look over through another little saddle and just like this little, I just call it like a little nipple out in this drainage. It's just like this little hill, and there's some white specks that are coming around the side of it. And I'm like, oh, I think there's sheep right there. So we get down, get the spotters out and look at them. And there's like 5 or 6 sheep. Most of them are not legal, but there is one that is legal. And it was a sheep that I really actually liked, and am bummed that we kind of screwed it up, but I'll get there. On the top of one of his horns, I think it was his right side, he had broken a chunk off. So he just gave him a lot of character. And then on that same side, he was broomed off a little bit. And then on the other side, he had a cool, like he really flared, his tips really flared around. And I thought that was super cool. So we decided to make a move on him. And this ridge that we're going up is like, it's just the kind of your basic spine in that country. It seems like very cliffy on one side, and then the other side it rounds off and is a little bit nicer. And of course, the part that's round off and nicer and easier to and faster to traverse, just faster to climb up, the sheep can see us if we were to do that. So we didn't want to chance that, but unfortunately we had to lose sight of them to go through some of these like cliffy rocks and stuff, and it just took longer because it just takes longer to get around and that kind of deal. So it took us a while, but we finally got to the top and we can't see the sheep. And there's a couple of things that we're thinking, like either one, they're still bedded around the side of the hill enough that we just can't see them, or they were already moving our direction. They might be right underneath us. So we dropped our packs where we were going to camp. Like, sure enough, it's pretty flat up there and you could see great. And we start walking off the top a little bit, just glassing, just moving slow, trying to make sure that we can see down below us. We think that we could see everything below us, and we decide okay, they must either be up and feeding, we just can't see them, or they're still bedded like a little further around the corner. And again, we can't see them. So probably, looking back, everything's always 20/20, your decisions, but we decide that it doesn't really get dark there until late anyways, like 9:30, 10 o'clock type of thing. So it's already late in the afternoon. It's like after dinner, the sun is starting to set, starting to get a little bit darker. So we rush it, probably try to go make a move. We don't get 200 yards from where we started, and the sheep come bumping out from underneath of us, and our wind probably did that more than our sound. But those sheep did, like they had moved as we were moving. They came underneath of us, and because of the way that the hills and stuff roll over there, it's just super hard to see them. And we thought we looked at it really good, but there was a little pocket that they were in, and they shot out. So he stopped at 450 yards, I think, for just a minute, just a second, and we were not ready to deal with that. So they go around this little nipple. We decided to follow them, which was probably not smart either, but we thought if they just went around that and stopped, that we would be able to find them. They might just be right there again. But they didn't. They kept going. I never saw them again. We turned around, went back up, had to make the climb back up to the peak where our camp was and stuff. And I remember getting like halfway up to the top of that thing and just being like, it is really cold. And we got to the top, and like I had an MSR water bladder that was full of water, and it was icing up on top. And it was just like starting to get really cold. So we pitched tents, and I remember it was really rocky up there, and I knocked stakes in as best I could, but it was clear skies. There was no wind. It was really nice. I'm like, I don't need to stake it down that good anyways. I'm going to be in it. Like, how can it roll me off? And the next morning I woke up to like pretty intense winds. It was raining, and you couldn't see a thing. So it was kind of scary. It was a little, it was a little scary. I wasn't worried about my tent so much, but I still had like stakes that were coming out, and I was trying to like tie guy lines to my backpack to keep them down and to try to keep things from flapping as much, because I was afraid that like if it flapped too much, I was going to have a pole go through the fabric or something. And I remember looking out into the other three dudes' tents, and they're just like not breaking either yet, but they're like flapping over super hard, and it was miserable. And I was like, Wes, what do we do, man? And he's like, I think we better get out of here before something breaks. So we, by the way, they were using Henry Shire's tarp tents, Rainbow 2s. And those things are light, and they seem to hold up pretty good. I know for sure they were a colder tent than my tent was. I ended up taking the cameras and lenses and stuff into my tent at night because it was just warmer, and the condensation didn't seem to hurt them as much or whatever. They didn't seem to fog up as much. So we rolled up camp like as fast as we could, just stuffed everything in our packs, dropped down to that flat spot where we had seen water, and we get pretty close to getting all the way down there. Like the wind has really died off, and it's, we're starting to kind of get some life back into us. And there was a sow with 2 cubs. I think there's 2. There might have been 3. I think there was just 2 cubs down below us, kind of working our direction. And you always are like, oh man, that's bear. Well, I didn't bring. I did. I brought bear spray, and I actually had brought a pistol too. I brought the X10 10 mil. And I actually left it. They talked both of us, Daniel and me, into leaving our tents because they're just like, it's just too much weight, which they weren't wrong. But you feel like you want something at that point in time. But we stayed there overnight, didn't have any bear issues. The weather was actually supposed to be socked in, snowing, and actually a pretty bad system coming through the next day. So we really were like, barricading things, making sure everything was like really well tied down, like all of our tents and stuff were guy lined out well. And so the next morning we woke up, and it was actually pretty nice. Like the clouds were broke up. There's a little bit of snow on the very peaks, but it wasn't too bad. So we packed camp up, and we walked up to the original saddle where we had gotten to the evening before. Started glassing. Saw some small rams. Saw one that was like borderline, but Wes is like, I don't want to get over there because he's like, I don't think he's gonna make it. So it's just, just is what it is. And had some wind and rain and just weather systems come through and on us just intermittently throughout the day. That's where my next great thing that I brought came in. The Kifaru sheep tarp. I need to look. I think it's like a 6x8 tarp. Something 6x9 it might be. It's a rectangular tarp. It's very lightweight. It's pretty inexpensive as well. I think they're like $100. And just to have like a little tarp like that you could use trekking poles to pitch it up. We had 4 of us under it, pretty much shoulder to shoulder, and even like staggered so we could all squeeze under that thing. So if you're going to do it for that many people, you probably get a little bit bigger one. But for that hunt, that sheep tarp worked really well for us. So, what else here? Yeah, so it started to break up in the afternoon and started to get nicer. The weather said it was supposed to get nicer, which was kind of the theme for this whole trip. Was the weather said it was supposed to be nicer and nice, and then it would break up and be really bad. So we got back up to the top, pitched our tents, really staked them down this time with huge boulders, and are just basically like, I hope that doesn't happen again. And the next morning, woke up and we were socked in, and it had snowed quite a bit, and it was pretty windy. And I just remember being like kind of mentally defeated a little bit. Just kind of like feeling like you're getting pushed around a little bit by Mother Nature, which is, it's nothing new. But, after you've been there at that point, 6-7 days, you're kind of like, all right, pretty tired of this. I had my inReach, and I pulled the weather on my inReach that morning in the tent, and every day just had snowflakes on it. And I remember feeling like super defeated and just being like, so we get all the way here, like all this anticipation, all this preparation, and like we can't even hunt because we can't see. And there's nowhere to go. It's not like you can, we're in the mountain range. Like you can't just drop down and cross into another one in that country. So we were just kind of there. And at this point we're getting kind of close to when we need to leave. So we're going to end up having to leave on a Friday morning at like 7 a.m. is when we were supposed to be back at the airstrip, and Luke was picking us up to take us out. And this was a Wednesday. So I'm like, Wes and I talked about it a little bit, and he's like, I know like it's still early. We don't really want to talk about it, but we should probably start talking about like our exit strategy here, because we're a long ways away from the airstrip. It's going to take us quite a while to get back there, especially if we shoot a sheep. We're going to be extra heavy going back and yada, yada. So we had those conversations, and it was a little, defeating, but finally that morning, everything kind of broke up. I got up, got out of my tent, walked over some rocks, and was looking into a basin that we had actually come from, like the airstrip side of the range, you could say. And I looked over and saw one sheep round a corner, and I was like, oh man, there's some sheep right here. So I went back. They had just got done like making breakfast, and we had coffee and whatever. We ate really quick. We packed our camp up, and we just made our way over to where we'd seen those sheep go. And like, it had just snowed, and all this country is so like rocky, and none of the rocks have a home, and they all want to roll on you. And it's like actually pretty dangerous. And, it was just kind of dangerous going across those rocks, and they were super slick with the snow, and it was awesome, but it was a little nerve-wracking at the moment. So we get over to where they were. We see some more sheep. We actually see some caribou, which was cool. But we saw some ewes with lambs. We saw some really young rams, and just like nothing that we could shoot. And so we were like, okay, well, we're just going to get up on this. We got up on this little rock, and the snow sucked in again. And then you start just being like, come on. Like, you finally start seeing sheep, and then you get socked in. So we had a little break in it, and from across the valley on another, not like a whole new mountain range, but across a big valley, there's 4 rams. And Wes is like, I'm pretty sure, it's a really long ways away. It was over 2 miles, but he's like, 2 of their tips look pretty good. He's like I can kind of see, I can see pretty good down to, like below their ears at the bottom. And then he's like, you can kind of imagine the rest of the way. So he's like, obviously I don't know, but I'm like pretty sure that at least one of these is going to be legal. And it was 5:00 in the afternoon. We still had snow kind of coming in and out, but at the lower elevations, it had really opened up and it wasn't too bad. And we were just like, we had a little talk as a team and said, all right, here's the deal. We're up here at the top. We're seeing some sheep, but we're not seeing rams. We can keep working our way along the top for another day, and then we got to bail. And just hope that we find a sheep up here, or we just leave right now. Wes says, I have slept as much as I need to sleep in the last 5 days for the next week. And he said, or we could just go and do it. We could just go, just start now. And I don't know when we can get there, or if we can get there, or if when we get there, they're still going to be there, or if they're going to be legal, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be legal. And I was just like, dude, I would rather go try this and have one not be legal, or have them get away or not get them or whatever, than sit up here just kind of hoping that a sheep is going to show up. And then go home knowing that we didn't even go try where we knew there were some rams that were probably legal. So at 5:00 that afternoon, we left kind of that main big ridge, shot down another kind of like an offshoot ridge. And then to get below them, where we actually wanted to be below them to start with, and then kind of make a move from there, we had to go back. We had to go down through the brush line, which sucks. And it was just really brushy and whatever. So we go down to kind of the end of the ridge. We look over, they're still there. So we make the play and we're like, all right, once we start going down through the brush line, we're not going to be able to see them. So we have a pin marked of where we're pretty sure they're going to be, and we're going. So we drop down through the brush line. It's super brushy. There's obviously bears around, and we get down, cross a creek. I remember we were going, it was super, super steep, and it's all that permafrost. So it's all mushy, and just being this literally sucks. But all of us, it helped to have everybody sucking at the same time. And we had fun. We went through the brush in the dark. We had we had some tumbles and some laughs and whatever. So we end up breaking through the brush line at the top. We get to this little set of rocks where we can see where the sheep were. And Wes glasses up there and he looks at me and he's like, they're still there. And I was like, that was part of the battle. Now I'm 1,000 yards. I feel like I'm 1,000 yards. I can make a play on this. And the next morning, so we ended up, we had thought about trying to go after him that evening, and we're just kind of nah, let's wait until the morning. They're going to get up, probably move around a little bit, hopefully rebed in a little bit of a better spot where we can approach better. So we are on this pretty steep side hill. There's not any flat spots or places to pitch a tent. So we just get our sleeping bags out of our bags and get in them and try not to roll down the hill, but try to catch a little bit of sleep. And of course, after this entire snow, cold weather system had moved through, it was the first clear night and it was so freaking cold. We were all super cold the next morning when we got up, but we just dealt with it. The sheep get up, they're feeding around. They end up kind of going behind this group of rocks, and we're like, well, we got to go now. Like, we got to get up there. So we put, it was me, my guide, and Jonah. We didn't even take our backpacks with us. We left them back with the packer, and we're just like, all right, we're going, trying to be as light as we could. So we made our way over there, and we get up to these rocks where I had last seen him go behind. And there's like this big crack in the rocks. And Wes is going up and he's like looking over, looking through it, looking over, and nothing. And I'm like, we got this far and they just slipped out on us. Like when we couldn't see them, they just slipped out of the back. And he kind of pokes his head like through these rocks, through this big crack in the rock. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, get down, 100 yards. And so I like get up, throw my bipod on a rock, and I start seeing these sheep file out. And they're probably, they were like 150 by the time like I could see them, because I didn't want to like really poke my head through and expose myself. So they were moving across this little, it's not even like a little divot drainage thing, but it's only about 300 yards across. And they're walking single file straight away from me. And I remember thinking like, I'm not even going to get a shot because they're going to walk straight away from me out of this entire thing. And finally, when they got up on the other side of the little dip, they turned a little bit, and Wes was telling me, like we made it, like communication was huge, made it really clear what ram I was going for, and he was calling out ranges, which was super helpful. Got to like I think it was like 224, and the ram that I was on was quartered. He was like quartered away from me pretty hard, but like I still had vitals. And he stopped, and I said, I'm going to shoot. And Wes said, go for it. And I shot, and it hit him kind of like behind the ribs, went through, exited kind of like low in his chest. And then he was stumbling around, and I had actually held, my scope has mill reticle also. So I had held, my holdover, which wasn't much. But when I re-racked and was going to shoot a second time, I didn't hold. I just, put my crosshairs on him and like kind of for like low in the chest, like heart. Shot hit right below him. So that was kind of embarrassing, but I reloaded and thought about it and was like, God, I didn't hold. And then he was kind of like, he got turned broadside, and I shot him, and then that was it. So, and then I had my sheep, and it was crazy walking up to that thing. It's just something like that you dream of for a long time, and you plan for it for a long time, and you just like put so much effort into the preparation and all that, and then you walk up to him. It's super, super hard to put into words. So, we packed him up that evening, and I think we ended up like, I did a full body mount on him. So we did a full body cape, debone the meat, did all that stuff, got him ready to go. We had our packs loaded with camp and the sheep at 7:00 at night. And I remember like once I got them all packed, so I had the cape and the horns, and then the packer and the guide, I'm pretty sure they split the meat. And then Jonah just kind of like any extra stuff that we had, we just tried to split the weight up as good as we could. I remember once I stood up with that backpack and I had it on, obviously it felt great, but it felt also very, very heavy. And it was like when we started going, like the first 6 steps or so, I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make this all the way there. Like, I'm going to have to load some stuff off. People are going to have to take some stuff because this is like super heavy. And we just trudged along. Like, we would just go, we'd stop and take breaks. We were eating Sour Patch Kids like crazy. And we had to go, a lot of it was like walking through the permafrost, kind of on the, just because we didn't want to go down and then go climb all the way back up and then down and then back up. Like, that wasn't good. So we went down, hit the creek bottom, tried to get away from the creek as much as we could so we could get away from some of the brush. We were just trying to find a good line to be able to walk through easily. So we were going like through the trees and through the brush, and it was pretty thick some of the time, and it really sucked. And then we had a big climb before we got back up to the where the airstrip was. I think we ended up getting back to the airstrip at like 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, and just literally just like walking that whole time, pretty much just like, walking a little ways. And then, we would sit down and take a break for like, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And then we would walk another like half hour. And it was, at the time, it was very, very miserable. Very awesome, but very miserable. So yeah, we got back up and slept for a couple hours in our tents. Luke came in, picked us up. Absolute beautiful bluebird sky without a lick of wind after just a week of horrible weather. And so that was well, we were pretty happy about that. And Luke took Jonah out. He brought in some beer for the guide and the packer. And I had a beer with those guys as Luke flew Jonah out. And looking back at you could kind of get a layout of, from the strip, you could get a layout of basically what we had done over that week. And you're just like, it's not as bad. When you're up there having a beer, looking back on it all, didn't seem that bad. But yeah, so we got flown out. So we got back. We actually, our charter that went from the lake back to Fairbanks and then flying back out was all happening very quickly. So we only had maybe a couple of hours from the time we got back that we could do anything. So I tried to, I moved the meat like from game bags into different bags, and we tried to freeze them as fast as we could. And then we put that meat in fish boxes and flew it back home with me. And then the hide and the head the hide came with me, I think. I don't remember how that worked. I'm pretty sure the hide came with me, and came home, put the meat in the freezer. Well, we got it all taken care of, put the meat in the freezer, took the hide to the taxidermist. They ended up taking the horns to Game and Fish, and they got them plugged, got them sent over to us. And then I got him mounted, from RJ Cole with Hunter's Choice Taxidermy here in Nampa, Idaho. And he did a super awesome job on it. It's like he's on some rocks, and one of his legs is up, and it's like he's moving, and it's just such a cool mount. I pretty much was just like, I kind of want him to be going downhill, and you just take it over. And he did an awesome job. So, okay. Some other gear things quickly I want to go through. So, water treatment wise, I took the MSR Trail Shot, which is just a little filter. You like squeeze it with your hands. I would not do that again. It really sucked bad. Doing it again, I would just what ended up happening is the guide didn't filter water either, so I also just quit filtering water. So then I was just carrying it around for fun. But looking back, like I would take a Sterapin or at least like some Aqua Taps or something like that. If you're worried about it, do something really light and simple. And I just wouldn't do a pump. I don't think. And then, as far as clothing goes, I took a basic clothing system. I just don't want to take, I don't think we need to dive into it a lot. It's what you guys hear me talk about a lot. Your basic, like merino, your like mid layers, and then like a puffy jacket and pants for sure. I took those two, and I was really glad that I did because of the weather that we had. And then I wore the Omen storm shelter jacket and pants. So that's the First Light heavy duty rain gear. I literally lived in that stuff the whole trip. I really like it. Really like the pocket designs. Really like how it fits. And I didn't get wet during the whole time. So there's that. I had a big boot failure. So when I was getting ready to go, I really like footwear, and I tend to try lots of different kinds of boots. And I had been using these Solewa. They're called Solewa Raven 3s. They're green, like lime green. I used them a lot here in the lower 48 throughout the spring, probably from like February, March on through that hunt in August. We were scouting deer, elk, doing backpack trips, you name it. We were doing it here in the lower 48. We just don't have quite the rocks that they do up there. And the rocks up there just absolutely shredded the sides of the boots. Like the soles and the fit, like they fit me really well. The soles were still good. But the fabric that they have on the side is not leather. It's like a synthetic kind of a Cordura-y type material. It's probably not Cordura, but it's that type of stuff. It has a little bit of texture to it, and the rocks just over time were just like obliterating it. I had Jonah bought a pair of Crispi Briksdal boots. I really wish I would have taken my Briksdals on there. Those are a set of boots that I just have tons and tons and tons of belief in, and why I didn't take them, who knows? I just was trying to be different, trying to try new stuff, I guess. I don't know. But the Crispi Briksdal is like badass. There's a lot of guys that use them. They're good boots. I'm pretty sure I took socks for every couple of days that I went. I took a set of socks for every couple of days, and then I would rotate those out. So when I got back, my feet were, if my socks were wet, which they always were, or like sweaty or whatever, damp, I would just pull them out, put them in the bottom of my sleeping bag because I knew my body heat that night would help dry them out. And then I would just take the socks I was going to wear the next day and put those on as warm socks. Or I would just sleep in my sleeping bag without socks. It kind of depended on how cold it was getting. Most of the time I slept with socks on. But that way, then you're going to bed with dry socks on, and that seemed to help with the chilliness. I planned to bring in Crocs, and then I just didn't buy Crocs, and I had a pair of like ultra lightweight running shoes. I took them with me to base camp, and then I ended up leaving them because I just didn't. Just decided to save the weight and not bring running shoes. Crocs were nice. There was one crit crossing that our guide used his Crocs on, which would have been a lot nicer than just trying to walk super fast with my boots, because I did get them wet. Garmin inReach, that was huge for being able to keep in touch with family and stuff at home. And then on this kind of longer trip, we ended up being there. I don't know. It was longer. I chose to rent a sat phone. It was an Iridium. I think it was a 9555 or 9755 or something like that. I rented it. I don't really remember how much that costs. You're all in, you're going to be in it a couple $100. But every other day I would call home. We knew that we had like 10 minutes or something like that if we did it every other day. So that's what I did. It ended up being kind of nice because we were weathered in so much. If we didn't have so much weather, it was still nice to call home, but there's just more stuff going on. I wouldn't have been as bored. But I ended up, I went back to Alaska that next year on a caribou hunt, and I ended up just buying an Iridium Go, which is a satellite phone that actually, it's a satellite module that hooks to your cell phone so you can call out from it. It worked pretty good. It's pretty expensive, but like on the really long trips, if I can call home a couple times, I just am a better person. Next thing, ultralight cup for coffee or tea, like a titanium cup or something like that. That's what I took. And that was nice to be able to have like your own cup for coffee or tea. camera gear wise, so I ended up taking, I didn't really talk about that. So to be able to charge stuff, I took a dark energy pack. I chose to just take one dark energy pack and take a solar panel. That's still probably a good way to go. We ended up actually charging camera batteries and trying to keep our phones charged and our inReaches and all that stuff because we were so bored for most of it. And then we have not favorable solar charging conditions. So we were ripping through batteries pretty quick. So there towards the end, we were having some issues. But depending on what camera you have, if you have like a DSLR, you can usually get on Amazon and get USB chargers for them. You can plug those into those dark energy packs. And then you can, at the time I was using an Anchor solar panel, but now like Dark Energy makes solar panels too. So you can kind of have a whole system. And that actually like works pretty good. The solar works pretty good. So, that is it. I know I'm kind of long, went, a little over an hour here. So, again, you can find the film if you go to my website at jordan-bud.com. You can go to the films tab and you can find it in the partner films called Behind the Gun. You can also probably find it on YouTube somewhere. And then, oh gosh, what else? And yeah, hopefully that helped you with hopefully that was like some source of entertainment plus filling you in on some gear stuff and helping you make some gear choices for next time. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. I will, if you're listening to this, thanks for listening to the story. I wish I told stories funnier. But this is all you get. So thanks for tuning in to this episode. I wish I told stories a little bit more funny, but that is just what you get. Super, super blessed and very thankful to be able to have taken a Dall Sheep and have it on my wall right now. And for anybody on the fence about going on a Dall Sheep hunt, man, just put that deposit down, commit to it, save some money over the next, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it's going to take you to be able to go on your trip and pay it off and have the experience of a lifetime. So with that, check out my website at jordan-bud.com. If you have any questions, you can drop me a contact on there. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at jordan.bud and Facebook, same thing, Jordan Bud. Find me, my YouTube channel, by typing in Jordan Bud as well. And then if you go to CarbonTV, to stream it from your TV, if you have the CarbonTV app, it's free. And you can find me at Jordan Bud Films on there. So we will talk to you guys in the next episode. If you have any questions, just hit me up.